I've guarded the powerful, the untouchable. I've seen the way their whispers can twist reality, the way their smiles hide sharper things. But that room, with Cassie's dark eyes and Diddy's silent control, it was different. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't just guarding a secret. I was standing watch over something ancient, something that had been worshipped and feared for centuries. When I see her on trial, those eyes still haunt me. Don't be fooled. She's not just another victim. She's something far, far worse. I've been a security guard for over a decade, long enough to know when to keep my head down and my mouth shut. You learn quick in this line of work. Loyalty over curiosity, paycheck over pride. You see things, hear things, but you don't talk. Not if you want to stay on the payroll. But this job, this was different. They called it the freak off room. It wasn't just a place. It was a whispered rumor, a shared glance between staff, a standing order to never open the door once it was closed. Diddy ran it like a secret society, and Cassie was always at the center of it, her laughter echoing through the halls, sharp and too perfect, like glass ready to shatter. Cassie had that kind of beauty that draws eyes, but keeps secrets. She'd glide past me, eyes sharp, smile perfectly placed, never a hair out of line. She looked every bit the pop star, but there was something behind her eyes, a kind of cold calculation that didn't match the sweet, innocent image she sold to the world. At first, I told myself it was just the job. High rollers, high stakes, high drama. But the longer I worked that door, the more I felt it. The way the air seemed to tighten when she walked by. The way Diddy's eyes followed her, possessive, watchful, like a predator with his prey. I should have trusted my gut. Should have walked away the first time I felt that chill creep up my spine. That instinct telling me I was standing too close to something dangerous. But the money was good. Too good. And that's how they get you. The first time I noticed it, I brushed it off. I just finished a 12-hour shift, eyes heavy, mind fogged over. I was standing outside the freak-off room, trying not to think about the muffled sounds slipping through the thick walls. Laughter, sharp and sudden. A woman's voice, then a deeper one, twisted with amusement. But then I caught something else. Cassie's voice, clear as day, whispering to someone. Not just whispering, arguing, her tone sharp, angry, her words cutting through the low hum of bass-heavy music. I leaned a little closer to the door, my pulse picking up. I knew Diddy wasn't there. He'd left for a shoot hours ago. Her voice dropped, fierce and commanding. I could make out just a few words. You owe me, you serve me. Then silence, the kind that makes your skin prickle. I stepped back, my heart hammering. I could feel the cold metal of my gun pressing against my hip, a small comfort in that moment. I ran my hand over my shaved head, grounding myself, reminding myself it was just a job. A few days later, I was posted by the same door, eyes on the hallway, when I heard it again. Cassie's voice, low and coaxing this time, like she was talking to a lover. I glanced down the hall, empty. I cracked the door open a fraction, the light slipping out in a thin, sharp line. She was alone, seated on the edge of the bed, her head tilted like she was listening to someone. Her lips moved, her words a soft, seductive hum. I couldn't make out the language, but the sound of it made my heart beat faster, my palms slick with sweat. It felt wrong, like hearing your own name whispered in a dark room. When she looked up, her eyes found the crack in the door, and for a heartbeat, I felt her gaze cut through the space between us, sharp and knowing. I pulled the door shut, my pulse echoing in my ears. After that, I started watching her more closely. The way she'd drift through the hallways, her bare feet whispering against polished floors, her eyes always moving, always calculating. She'd catch me looking sometimes, and her lips would curl into a smile that felt like a blade against my throat. It started messing with my head. I'd catch glimpses of her out of the corner of my eye, standing too still in a darkened hallway, her head tilted, her eyes too sharp, too aware. And then one night, as I was heading down to the kitchen for a late cup of coffee, I heard it again. That whisper, slipping through the vents, winding through the air like smoke. But this time, it wasn't just her voice. There was another voice, deeper, rougher, almost inhuman, answering her, rumbling through the walls like the slow roll of thunder. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. I gripped the handle of my pistol, the cool metal biting into my palm. For a moment, I thought about kicking in the door, about ripping the truth out of that darkened room. But something held me back. Fear. Maybe. Instinct. Definitely. I backed away, every instinct screaming at me to run, to leave, to never come back. But I didn't, and that was my first mistake. Diddy had been gone for 3 days, off in LA shooting a video. The house felt different without him, quieter, the tension thicker, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Without Diddy's overbearing presence, the mansion felt more like a stage Cassie had all to herself, and she moved through it with a strange, unsettling confidence. I'd never been alone with her for this long, never been the only set of eyes watching her. It felt wrong, like being left in a room with a loaded gun, the safety off. It was the third night when I first noticed it, her voice coming from the freak-off room, cutting through the silence. I moved closer, my boots whispering against the polished floor. I could hear her clearly now, her tone cold, commanding. It didn't match the pop princess persona she put on for the cameras. I don't need you. You owe me. You all owe me. She spat, her voice low and venomous, sharp enough to leave a sting in the air. I froze outside the door, every nerve on edge. I should have walked away, should have gone back to my post by the main entrance. But something held me there, the kind of morbid curiosity that makes you slow down when you pass a wreck on the highway. Then her tone shifted, her words slipping into a guttural, twisting language I'd never heard before. It didn't sound like Spanish, French, or any of the half-dozen other languages I'd picked up bits of over the years. It was darker, more primal, each word like the scrape of metal against bone. I felt my fingers tighten around the grip of my pistol, the weight of it suddenly heavy, grounding. I edged closer, the sound of my own heartbeat loud in my ears. I pushed the door open just a crack, just enough to see her standing in front of the massive, wall-length mirror. She caught my reflection, her eyes locking onto mine, sharp and unblinking. For a moment, I thought I saw something move in the glass beside her, a shadow that shouldn't have been there. But when I blinked, it was just her, alone. She turned slowly, her head tilted, her eyes never leaving mine. Her lips curled into a slow, knowing smile, the kind that cuts through pretense and strikes right at the heart. Then, without breaking eye contact, she reached for the electric clippers on the table beside her. I watched, frozen, as she flicked them on, the sharp buzz filling the room, echoing off the marble floors. She lifted the clippers to her head, pressing them against her scalp without a moment's hesitation. Thick, dark hair fell in uneven chunks, the strands sticking to her bare shoulders, her eyes never once leaving mine. It felt like a challenge, like she was daring me to stop her, to say something, to break the silent agreement we'd all signed by stepping into this twisted, secret world. I felt my throat tighten, the words catching there, but I stayed silent. My hand locked around the pistol at my side, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. When she finally finished, the clippers fell silent, the last strands of hair slipping from her fingers. She took a step closer to the mirror, tilting her head, admiring the freshly exposed skin, the sharp, angular shape of her skull, the way the dim light caught on the fine line of her jaw. Her eyes flicked back to mine, her lips parting just enough to show a flash of teeth, her breath coming in slow, measured beats. "You can keep watching," she said, her voice low and steady, each word cutting through the silence like a blade. "Or you can walk away. But either way, you're already part of this." She turned back to the mirror, the corners of her mouth pulling into that same sharp, knowing smile, the kind that makes you question. what you're really looking at, what kind of thing you're really guarding. I closed the door, my hands trembling, my pulse still racing. I leaned back against the cold wall, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was then that I realized this wasn't just a pop star with a twisted side, not just a troubled celebrity spiraling out of control. This was something older, something darker, something that had learned to wear a beautiful face and walk the world like a human. The next day I stood outside the freak-off room, my stomach twisted in knots, my mind racing with everything I'd seen. The image of Cassie, head half shaved, her eyes sharp and knowing, had burned itself into my memory. I hadn't slept, my thoughts circling back to that moment over and over, trying to make sense of it. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was some twisted sense of duty, maybe just plain stupidity. But I pushed the door open, stepping into the dimly lit room. Cassie was sitting on the edge of the bed, her freshly shorn scalp catching the slivers of light slipping through the heavy curtains. She looked up, her eyes locking onto mine, her expression blank, unreadable. I took a breath, my mouth dry, my pulse thundering in my ears. "You don't have to do this, Cassie. Whatever they have on you, whatever they're making you do, I can help. I can get you out of here." For a heartbeat, the room felt still, the air thick, the only sound my own ragged breathing. Her eyes flicked to mine, her head tilting just slightly, a hint of curiosity in the set of her jaw. For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to her, that I'd cracked whatever hold this twisted world had on her. But then she laughed, a low, mocking sound that hit me like ice water, sharp and cutting, echoing off the cold marble walls. She stood slowly, her movements precise, her bare feet whispering against the polished floor. She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving mine, her smile stretching into something feral, predatory. "Save me," she whispered, her voice low, layered with something ancient, something that felt more like a growl than a human tone. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." She leaned in, her breath cold against my ear, her voice dropping to a dark, seductive murmur. "You can't save me, because I never needed saving. Every woman in the world wants to be me. They worship me, and it's all for Diddy." She stepped back, her eyes sharp, her posture strong, radiating the kind of quiet, coiled power that comes from control, from manipulation, from centuries of knowing exactly what buttons to push and which strings to pull. "I'm not trapped," she continued, her voice growing colder, sharper. "I'm worshipped. You think you're the one in control? You think your gun, your muscles, your stone-faced stare mean anything here?" She let out a short, humorless laugh, her eyes glittering with something close to contempt. "I choose this. This power, this control, it's mine. It always has been." She spread her arms, the long, pale lines of her fingers stretching out as if to embrace the very walls, the very air, like a queen claiming her throne. "I'm the one they worship. I'm the one they fear. And you?" She leaned in again, her lips just a breath away from my ear. "You're just a guard, just a man, a tool, another piece on the board." My pulse spiked, my legs stiffening, my throat closing up. I stumbled back, the distance between us suddenly feeling like miles, the weight of her words pressing down on me like a vice. I felt the cold, slick wall at my back, my mind spinning, trying to reconcile the sweet-faced, wide-eyed pop star I'd seen on magazine covers with the ancient, manipulative force standing before me now. I staggered out of the room, my breaths coming in short, panicked bursts, the taste of her words still bitter on my tongue. As I fumbled for the doorknob, I felt her eyes on me, her presence filling the space, seeping into the walls, the floors, the air itself. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just guarding a pop star with a dark side. I was standing in the presence of something far older, far more dangerous, something that feeds on power, thrives on control, and wears a beautiful face to hide its ancient, twisted soul. I slammed the door shut, my fingers trembling, my mind racing with a single chilling thought. Whatever she is, she's not the one who needs saving. Diddy came back late, the rumble of his convoy shaking the walls as it pulled into the driveway. I felt it before I saw him, the shift in the atmosphere, the way the mansion itself seemed to come alive at his arrival, like a predator stretching its limbs, baring its teeth. I was in the hallway, my back to the cold stone wall, eyes on the door to the freak-off room. It had been 2 days since my last encounter with Cassie, 2 days of cold sweats and restless, haunted sleep. I hadn't set foot in that room since, and my body still felt tight, my nerves frayed, like a wire pulled too thin. Diddy strode in, his presence filling the space, his eyes sharp, assessing, cutting through the shadows. He had that heavy, predatory energy, the kind that makes everyone around him instinctively fall in line. You could feel it in the air, the way the walls seemed to lean in, the way the lights seemed a little dimmer in his presence. He paused at the door, one hand on the polished brass handle, his head tilted slightly, listening. I felt his eyes flick my way, his expression unreadable. A brief moment that felt like the silent, assessing stare of a lion before it decides whether to strike or let you run. The door swung open and he stepped inside, the thick, polished wood closing behind him, with a low, final-sounding click. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, my pulse still racing, my mind still buzzing with 1,000 half-formed thoughts. A few minutes later, the door creaked open again, and Cassie leaned out, her freshly shaved head catching the dim hallway light, her eyes sharp, predatory. "Hey," she said, her voice low, casual, too casual. The girl I hired for the night just canceled. She let the words hang in the air, her eyes locking onto mine, her lips curling into a slow, twisted smile. "You want to join us? Have a little fun?" My mouth went dry, my pulse spiking, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. I felt the walls close in, the air around me tightening, my instincts screaming at me to turn, to run, to get as far from that room as possible. But my legs felt like lead, my mind caught in a slow, spiraling freefall, my body locked in place, pinned down by her gaze. She stepped back into the room, her eyes never leaving mine, her bare shoulders catching the light, casting sharp, twisted shadows against the wall. She moved like a predator, slow and deliberate, each step a silent taunt, a dare. I took a half step forward, my mind blank, my body moving on autopilot, like a rabbit stumbling into a wolf's den. Diddy looked up as I crossed the threshold, his eyes catching mine, holding me in place without a word. The silence between us felt thick, oppressive, like a storm cloud about to break. They shared a glance, a silent, knowing exchange. Their eyes meeting in a way that felt too intimate, too old, like two predators who had been circling each other for lifetimes, each one feeding off the other's darkness. Cassie stepped closer to him, her bare scalp catching the dim, flickering light, her smile stretching into something sharp, something almost inhuman. She leaned into him, her eyes never leaving mine, her lips brushing his ear, her words too low for me to hear but carrying a dark, twisted weight. Diddy's eyes flicked to me, his gaze sharp, unblinking, his jaw set, his expression somewhere between a smirk and a snarl. I felt my knees weaken, my throat tighten, my body screaming at me to get out, to run, to escape while I still could. I took a step back, my boots scuffing against the polished marble, the sound too loud, too sharp in the tight, breathless space. Cassie's eyes followed my movement, her smile widening, her teeth catching the light, her head tilting slightly, like she was watching prey try to make a break for it. I stumbled back, my mind a blur of fear and adrenaline, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Cassie leaned back against the wall, her head tilted, the dim light casting sharp shadows along her bare scalp. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing, her lips pulling into that sharp, knowing smile. "You don't get it, do you?" she whispered, her voice low, almost affectionate. "I'm not just some girl trapped in this world. I'm the one they all come to see. I'm the one they worship." She took a step closer, the tips of her bare toes brushing the edge of the thick, patterned rug. I felt the heat of her presence, the slow, deliberate pulse of her energy, like a predator toying with prey. You ever heard of Jezebel? She continued, her voice dripping with a slow, dark pleasure. The queen who twisted kings, who led men to ruin, who held power in a world that feared her. She didn't just take power, she became power. She whispered in the ears of rulers, twisted their minds, made them forget themselves, made them worship her. Her eyes flicked to Diddy, who leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp, his mouth pulled into a slow, approving grin. But even Jezebel, Cassie said, her voice dropping to a dark, seductive whisper, even she served a king, a real king, one whose whispers shaped empires, whose desires shattered nations. I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end, a cold, creeping dread settling in my bones. She wasn't the power, Cassie continued, her eyes gleaming, her teeth flashing in the low light. She was the voice, the lure, the beautiful mask for something much older, much darker. She moved closer, her bare feet whispering against the cold marble, her body inches from mine, her breath brushing against my cheek. And I serve the same king, she whispered, her words curling around my brain, settling deep in my gut. I am the whisper, the temptation, the thing they all want, the thing they all fear. And he. She nodded at Diddy, who smirked, his eyes locking onto mine, his presence suddenly oppressive, his silence heavy, suffocating. He's the real power, the real king. I felt my pulse spike, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. I took a step back, my hand falling to the grip of my gun, my fingers tightening around the cold metal. The only solid thing in that twisting, shifting reality. Cassie's smile widened, her eyes sharp, her head tilting like a predator studying a wounded animal. So what do you say? She whispered, her voice low, dripping with dark, ancient desire. Stay, join us. See what real power tastes like. I took another step back, my fingers wrapped tight around the grip of my gun, my mind screaming at me to leave, to run, to get as far from this twisted nightmare as possible. I backed away slowly, my heart racing, my body shaking, my mind already splintering at the edges. I don't remember stumbling down the hallway. I don't remember my fingers fumbling for the front door handle, my boots slipping against the polished marble as I staggered outside into the cool, damp night. I do remember the sound of my own breath, sharp and panicked, ripping through my chest like the gasps of a drowning man. I remember the weight of my pistol in my hand, the cold metal grounding me as I stumbled across the driveway, my shadow stretching long and twisted in the headlights of the waiting convoy. I should have stopped, I should have turned back, should have said something, anything, but the words caught in my throat, my mind blank, my pulse a steady, deafening roar in my ears. I quit that night, dropped my badge, my gun, my keys, and walked away. I never looked back. But that house, that room, Cassie's eyes, they never really left me. I see them sometimes, in the half-light of a late-night TV screen, her smile stretched wide for the cameras, her eyes sharp, calculating, always watching. I hear her voice in the silence, a soft, taunting whisper that slips through the cracks in my mind, reminding me of what I saw, what I almost became a part of. I try to shake it off, try to tell myself, it's just paranoia, just a bad memory. But deep down, I know the truth. I got too close. I stumbled into something ancient, something twisted, something that wears a beautiful face and speaks in whispers, something that feeds on fear and dominates through control. I should have listened to my gut. I should have walked away the first time I felt that chill. The first time I heard her voice slipping through the walls, her words wrapping around my mind like a vice. But I didn't. And now, when I close my eyes, I still see her. Cassie. Not the innocent woman you see on trial. Not the victim the world has painted her to be. She's something else. Something far older. Something that wears a pretty face and calls itself a queen. And I know deep down that I'll never truly escape her. Because you can't run from a demon that's already marked you.